we've got to figure out if this training camp stuff is actually real or if it's just fluff, because it's affecting these players' dynasty values. And so keeping your head above the waves and also knowing who to trust for sources is really important. In my opinion, the best people to trust for sources when it comes to actual player news during training camp is the beat writers, not the Dov guy on Twitter, not anybody on Twitter, not any tweets, and not Sleeper. We did the thing about Sleeper. I'm not doing it again. You know how I feel about this. The beat writers that cover the individual teams are probably the best source because they're there at camp. They have really no bias. Most of the time, the beat writers at training camp actually haven't been associated with the team. This is actually just the job that they got, and they're covering this. There's no emotional attachment to the team. They're not trying to sway fantasy football players. They're completely removed from the situation. And so that's why they're probably the best source to trust. And so what we're doing is we're taking what we've heard from beat writers so far in camp. Is this stuff real? Because, again, these guys, their dynasty value is going woo a little bit, and we got to try to sort it out a little bit. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. His dynasty value actually had already fallen a little bit, and I think people kind of got the vibe that he probably wasn't going to be ready for the start of this year. Well, John Lynch not only said that, he was basically like, timetable.
What timetable? There is no timetable. We're not even close to a timetable.
We're trying to win a game. And so Ayuk
timetable,
that's playoffs. Ayuk right now, I mean, he look at his value, and it's just really since it dipped, I think, in like March. I don't remember when exactly it took like a little bit of a sharp dip. It would have been okay. So it was the draft. Why did it take a dip around the draft if they didn't draft anybody? What was the deal there? That's confusing to me. Anyways, it's Dynasty. Who knows? Really, since, like the middle of February, it's just been like a pretty steady decline, and it goes down and down and down and down. And what you see, he's gone from the wide receiver 29 to wide receiver 40 in that time span. And we haven't played a lick of football. We've learned more about his injury, but haven't played a lick of football. And now John Lynch, during training camp, saying that Brandon Ayuk is not going to be ready for the start of the season. And what does it mean? It means if you have Brandon Ayuk, which, again, we told you to buy Brandon Ayuk low, he's still a buy low because he's still going to go up in value when he plays. He will. That's just how it is. Even if he doesn't go back to what he was, he's going to go up in value eventually. The problem is if you're a contending team, depending on what price you got in on Brandon Ayuk at, you might be sweating a little bit because you're like, hey, I don't really have some high upside flex guys right now because I've got Brandon Ayuk sitting on my IR. That's a legitimate concern at this point. In terms of actual, like, what you should expect from Brandon Ayuk this year on your dynasty roster, I would say expect nothing. I would say at this point you just expect nothing and expect something from him this year. And so rebuilds, reloads. This might be a guy you go out and trade for because his value increase is going to come next year. If you're rebuilding or reloading, you don't really care about his value until next year. Contending guys, it's also tough to sell low. And so really, whether you're contending or whether you're rebuilding or reloading, you kind of have to hope that whoever you're trading with hasn't seen this video and you can take advantage. If you're a contender, or if you're honestly for anybody, I would say you have to hold Ayuk right now. You don't want to sell low on him. But if you are rebuilding and reloading, you can buy Ayuk. I mean, his value is continuing to go down. But here's the thing. If you're a contender, he's a riskier buy because he's not going to help you at all win a championship. And so if you're contending and you want to hold him, I understand. But probably not buying as a contender is what I'm saying with Brandon Ayuk. And so I think it's real. I think this definitely raises the stock this year, at least short term, for Ricky Pearsall to potentially jump up in value in Dynasty. And if Juwan Jennings gets the contract stuff figured out, I really hope he does because I have a lot of Juwan Jennings. Then he could potentially may not be a value jumper, but be somebody who is a really good flex spot option for you. Ricky Pearsall is also on the puppy dog list. And so Juwan Jennings right there is sitting in the room like, me? Yeah. And if it does, again, work out with contract, it should be fine. But, it does, we were worried about Ricky Pearsall on his own right a little bit. And so it does kind of boost the stock, the potential value increases or production profiles of the other 49ers wide receiver. And definitely know that Kittle's going to absolutely eat this year. There's really no question about that. But we already kind of knew that. So with Ayuk, I think we were already expecting him to miss some time. But this kind of solidifies that opinion. And I think his value is only going to continue to just taper down a little bit. So it should bottom out eventually. So
yeah, I think this is the training camp that we've gotten a lot of decent news from Zach Charbonnet than really I almost ever since he came into the league, because there was always the looming Kenneth Walker situation. Even when Zach Charbonnet was a rookie, he wasn't getting a ton of buzz or a ton of positive press because he was effectively the RB2 in that offense in that situation. But right now you're looking at Seattle with a new offensive coordinator after they fired Ryan Grubb last season, and Kenneth Walker after, what has it been, 3 years now? 3 or 4 years? I think it's been 3 years. Walker can't stay healthy. He cannot stay healthy for a significant amount of time or stay on the field consistently and with a significant amount of snap share and opportunity. Even last season in 2024, he missed a ton of time and he still had limited snap share week in and week out, anywhere from 50 to 70%, and that was too much because he kept getting hurt. The year before that, he was floating around the same number, and his rookie season, I mean, he was trying to ramp up, and then anytime he ramped up, he got injured. Which is just it just is unfortunate for Walker, because I think anyone who watches par for the course with Walker,
he's
and it
very
sucks.
talented.
It really sucks because we watch him a lot. Avery watched him
every
lot
game.
last
Every game.
year
I watched every
because
Seahawks game.
Heavy investment. You watch him play and he gets the ball and you're like,
nice.
That's top 5 talent at the running back position in Dynasty, and then he gets hurt and you're like, that's a top 24 floor. That's a bottom low end running back 2 floor when it comes to his value, because he could get hurt any given week, any given moment. So with Zach Charbonnet, the news is Zach Charbonnet is getting a lot more touches and a lot more opportunities, a lot more consistently in an offense that's looking to feature him a lot more than they have in years past. And I think that's really what you want to be paying attention to this training camp and heading into this season is, let's be honest, guys. If Kenneth Walker had stayed healthy last year, again, big if he had stayed healthy last year, he would have been one of the best league winners in fantasy football and in Dynasty, honestly, if you had gotten him at a discount. I don't even think we're going to be at that point anymore. I think when Kenneth Walker gets touches, gets opportunities, gets the ball, he's going to look electric. He's going to be great. I think his floor this season will be, even if he stays healthy and stays on the field, I think his floor will be lower than it has in years past when they're both healthy in the same offense at the same time, playing in the same game when they're both healthy. But it's going to be a little shaky because Walker may get a lot of the valuable touches in terms of like goal line, short yardage situations and stuff like that, maybe get some red zone opportunities and whatnot, but his receiving usage is not consistent enough. And his health is not reliable enough for us to really believe and expect that he's going to be a consistent difference maker week in and week out for you in Dynasty this season. So when you're looking at Zach Charbonnet, I think this honestly kind of just flips the script on what Walker's upside could be consistently if he theoretically were to stay healthy all season, rather than us being like, oh, Zach Charbonnet is going to break the bank and go absolutely nuts this year.
Right.
Like Charbonnet went nuts when he was getting all the carries and all the opportunities last season when Walker was not on the field. When they're both on the field, he's aight. He's nothing super duper special in terms of production. We like him a lot. We think he's really, really solid, and obviously was worth the second round pick. I think that they invested in. I wish it was just him in that backfield, but that's not the reality. And he's not as explosive as Kenneth Walker is. Kenneth Walker is the more talented, athletically gifted back there. Charbonnet is the one that stays healthy. Charbonnet is the one that will be on the field pretty much every game because he won't get hurt. And when Walker is there and when he's healthy the whole time, Charbonnet is going to continue to have, I think, the floor and really the cap ceiling that he's had for the first 2 seasons that he's been there with Walker. So again, if you're a big Walker guy and really want to heavily invest in him this offseason, I would definitely hold back now because of this news that's coming out. If he loses a lot more value and is even less valuable than he has been over the last couple of months of the offseason, then we can have this discussion again. But at the moment, honestly, this just makes me less optimistic about Walker this season.
One of the best ways to figure out, okay, I've got this guy on my roster, what do I do with him, is just to ask us, because we're doing team blueprints right now for guys who are getting ready for their Dynasty seasons. You can get one for free with the annual Motherflocker tier with code DOMAIN. Again, that gets you a free team blueprint. We could even do it on a live stream for you if you want to, but you also get infinite blueprint. With that, you get everything the site offers. You get direct access to Nathan and I, and again, that team blueprint process walks you through exactly what you should do with your Dynasty team, and then Nathan and I walk alongside you as you do it after your blueprint. And so you can get one again for free at flockfantasy.com/domain, code domain, annual Motherflocker tier. Come join the community, and we can give you a second opinion on your team and get you a plan going into the season, which I think is really important. This guy has probably been, in my opinion, from beat writers, I've heard the most about Jameson Williams, and I've heard from anybody so far this camp. And we're early, but Jameson Williams' value did a weird thing this offseason. It kind of, as the season ended, he was at like wide receiver 21. And he dipped in like early May at the wide receiver 31, and then now he's back up to like wide receiver 22. So he kind of just dipped for no reason, I guess. I guess maybe people thought, I don't know what people thought, honestly. I know the biggest thing with Jameson Williams, which we have, I think, correctly said, like there's a question about the scheme without Ben Johnson. But there have been some arguments, and I've pointed this out to Nathan on videos as well. I think you've heard me say it, and we've said it, at times in our team blueprints, there have been some, reports that the Lions actually are expected to throw downfield more. And so far in training camp, that's the case because Jameson Williams has been the star at Lions training camp every single day so far. And it's not. And here's the thing about his value. Since training camp started, his value hasn't moved at all. And so the Dynasty community has not caught on to this yet. And so really here's what is our verdict on, is this real or is it not? My guess is this is a good time for Jameson Williams because I think it means that as the wide receiver 22 in PPR last year, it means that he can probably do that again. I don't think we're unlocking some top 12 wide receiver potential for Jameson Williams here. I think the odds are if he's going to perform at a high level, it's going to be at a wide receiver 2 level. And the question really was, and why his price was dropping and why we were recommending him as a pivot, can he be that wide receiver 2? Well, if this situation continues like it does, and the beat writer for the Lions is, well, there's a couple. I've got Christian Boer here. I've got Tim Twentyman here. These are awesome names.
Wow, that's
I love Twentyman. That's I want Eric Schlitt. I mean, so there's a bunch of guys contributing for the Lions.
Say that again, Eric what?
Schlitt, actually.
Okay.
Not to be mistaken with the other word that sounds like that.
Schmidt.
No. And
that's
so if this is true, again, like what does this mean for JMO? And again, a lot of times, like we said, the best thing to do in camp is nothing. But I do think as a contender, what this means if you have Jameson Williams, you feel a little bit better about flexing him this year if this is actually true. So maybe you're not trying to hard sell JMO. Now, if you sold JMO and you pivoted, you probably got somebody in that range that was good, I would assume, for that deal. But there have been deals where we've done blueprints for people where they actually have been acquiring Jameson Williams, and it's worked out very well for them. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on JMO. I don't want to tell you, hey, go speed buy JMO. This is more, I'm giving you the information. Evidently, he's killing it at camp. And so if you want to buy him for that reason and you think, but again, I don't know what his value ceiling is compared to where it's at right now at wide receiver 22. If he's wide receiver 31, I'd say he's a buy right now. But because he's gone back up to wide receiver 22, I don't think he's like a hard buy, but I do think there's a chance he could repeat what he did last year, and I think that's very good for contending dynasty rosters if you have Jameson Williams.
I don't think I stand by my opinion on that offense has been all off season, and it's based off of what we saw last year in Sam Laporta's regression. Jameson Williams cannot produce at a high level while Sam Laporta is producing at a high level, while Amon-Ra is producing at a high level, while Gibbs and Monty are producing at a high level. One of those guys has to be the odd man out, and it's, I would assume by default, got to be JMO or Sam Laporta. It was Laporta last year.
Yeah,
so if you're expecting Laporta to bounce back this season, then I think you by default have to be low on JMO. I don't think you can be high on both, and that I could be totally wrong about that, and they could defy all the odds again this season. That's I guess possible.
But he's going to be a boom bust guy. In weeks 10 through 18, where Laporta was actually really good, he had games of 22, 26, 24, also had games of 8, 9, and 9. And so, like,
right.
That tells us right now he's going to score between 9 and 25 points. But the fact of the matter is, I do think this maybe signals that his boom games might not be going away, which I think is great. Makes him very valuable in best ball formats, by the way. Dynasty best ball, regular best ball, great best ball pick. And in your dynasty leagues where you're just starting your setting your starting lineup every week, he could be a decent flex option, but you have to know that he's going to be inconsistent, and you got to be swinging for the fences if you're going to start him this year. Yeah.
So Luther Burden getting a little buzz from some hype peeps online.
Very little. This is not warranted.
This is very little, but I just wanted to highlight it because this is some of the noise that you do want to avoid.
Yes.
At all costs. Is again, a lot of this news has been beat writer news that we've been talking about. This comp of Luther Burden being the next Amon-Ra St. Brown is one that is really just a shot called from people that have platforms on whether it be PFF, whether it be Sleeper, whether it be these other organizations that again offer really, really good perks, whether it's good fantasy platforms, good statistical analysis, in-depth stuff. But again, when you're talking about reports like this, these are quite literally predictions trying to get you excited about a player who isn't really going to be getting a ton of buzz all training camp. So I will just say here, guys, this isn't us saying that Luther Burden is never going to be good. Luther Burden had a good prospect profile. He was solid in the bakery, even with early second-round draft capital. He's in a pretty decent tier where he's got about a 50-50 shot, I guess, historically speaking, of being a pretty solid asset in Dynasty. That being said, it is a crowded room, and we're going to call our shot on Rome Odunze and DJ Moore being a lot more productive before Burden is this season.
And really, this I think the original source of this hype was Sleeper, because I think Sleeper was the one that had the alert that says, could Ben Johnson put Luther Burden in the Amon-Ra role? Well, they're not the same player at all. Not even close to the same player, in my opinion. And so That's conjecture. That's hype. It's not a real source. We've heard nothing out of training camp yet from Luther Burden. Who knows? Maybe he's going to have good days at training camp, guys. But again, the situation does not really lend itself to a rookie like Luther Burden and not a typically low target volume guy in space competing with two other really good wide receiver rookie to produce in year one. That's probably noise. Let's talk about Chris Godwin real quick. Godwin, the big news came out. I want to see what happened to his value. I think I know what happened to his value. I think you see a little baby dip here. The big news came out. Oh, Godwin is not starting training camp. I would like to show you this tweet that should calm you down with Chris Godwin if you're a Chris Godwin owner from Corey from FSE, by the way, one of our Flock League members, one of our buddies. So he says these are Todd Bowles quotes from August 5th, 2022. Godwin did play in Week 1 despite suffering a multi-ligament ACL tear 7.67 months earlier during Week 15 of the 21 season. He had 15 points per game. He was the wide receiver 15 that year. Wide receiver 10 from Week 4 onward in a season where Brady's passing production was abysmal. He had 6.4 yards per attempt and a much worse offense in the current Bucs. He said, monitor this news, but I lean towards buying the dip at ADP. And basically, they were saying he was starting on the puppy list, I think. So in that year, and he ended up playing Week 1, and he ended up being a top 15 wide receiver. With Godwin, this is no reason to panic. We knew that this was a possibility, and it's also why we told you to buy Emeka Egbuka, because we knew that negative news against Chris Godwin would immediately push Emeka Egbuka's. Because again, we can't. A lot of times as dynasty players, we can't outlook at things in two-dimensional formats. So we do Chris Godwin bad news, like, oh, Emeka Egbuka season. I swear, some of you are bots. That anytime there is negative news for a player, the player's teammate gets their name in your tweet and then SZN right after it. It's like going to the doctor and they're hitting your knee and your knee's like, like it's a reflex. It is a reflex for dynasty players to be like, Emeka Egbuka season, when there's one lick of not encouraging news on Chris Godwin. And it's not even all that surprising. If you're paying attention, he probably wasn't going to be ready for the start of training camp. Doesn't mean he won't be ready for Week 1. And Egbuka, he's pretty much stayed exactly the same. Thank goodness, because it means we're starting to finally learn that Egbuka is a guy that, whether it happens this year or not is not dependent on the Chris Godwin news right now. And so with Godwin, I would keep your head above the waves. I would hold the line. I would hold him if you're a contender because he could be a league-winning flex spot. Again, we're not really worried about Chris Godwin doing a ton for you with his current value being like 9th, 10th round until the playoffs. And he could get better before the playoffs. And again, I think that we have every reason to believe that Chris Godwin will eventually be fine this year. He has a good history coming off of worse injuries than the one he suffered. And so I don't think it's necessarily a Emeka Egbuka season. We still love Egbuka. He's still a good buy in Dynasty in our opinion. The Chris Godwin news is not all that unexpected. And so see through that. Keep your head above the waves.
Yeah. So Chase Brown getting some talk out of Bugle's training camp as well in the early days of everybody pretty much all being together across the NFL. And Chase Brown is reported to be a, quote, big part of Cincinnati Bugle's 2025 offense. Dan Pitcher, who's the OC for the Bugle, says we believe we have a feature back in Chase Brown in a press conference clip. And let me just say this. No crap. Who else is there? Zach Moss can't stay healthy. He couldn't stay healthy in Buffalo. He couldn't stay healthy with the Colts. He couldn't stay healthy last year when he had an opportunity to be the starting back there. He was at the beginning of the season and was okay, but wasn't any more efficient or more effective or more impactful than Chase Brown was from weeks 6 to 17 when he was getting a full workload. This is one where honestly, if this is actually boosting Chase Brown's stock, I would just ask why. Nothing has changed about this situation. Of course, he's going to be a feature back. He's the only one that matters at that position in this year. And I know people are going to talk about, the Zach Moss and how they brought him back and all that stuff. Yes, he will play second fiddle to Chase Brown. He will be the backup to Chase Brown now instead of it being the other way around in 2024. He might still get some touches and opportunities, but Chase Brown is going to get a bulk of the work and the bulk of the opportunities and all of the relevant point scoring upside opportunities. This isn't us talking down, I don't think, on Chase Brown and saying that he's bad. It's also not us talking up on Chase Brown and saying that he's going to be, absolutely incredible and amazing and a top 5 running back. I think he'll probably settle in the low end running back 1 production range. I mean, you saw last season he was 16th in snap share, even when he was getting a full workload. From week 6 to week 17, where he was the lead back there, he was 16th in snap share among running backs. And across the board, he was in the late teens. I mean, rush attempts 19th, rushing yards 19th, yards per carry 18th, rushing attempts inside the 5 17th, targets he was 9th, but he was only 18th in receiving yards, total touchdowns 15th, total yards 17th. He's not from a talent perspective, he's not a special back. He's not especially efficient. He's on an offense that passes the ball like crazy and scores 50 bajillion points per game. And that results in production for Chase Brown. I mean, 15.9 points per game, PPR points last season in the run where he was a lead back from week 6 to 17. I think, honestly, barring injury, you're probably going to be expecting pretty similar production this season as well, and nothing about it changed. So if you're boosting Chase Brown up your dynasty boards, I would just ask why. Like, we knew this when they didn't draft a running back in the NFL draft. So
yeah, we did. I will say I do like Chase Brown this year, but another guy that we've talked about more in Dynasty than we have redraft favorably is Rashee Rice. Well, evidently, and I'm just going to read you the training camp news so far from Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is not only practicing. We figured, we knew this a couple weeks ago that he was going to be ready for training camp. Nate Taylor, a beat writer for the Chiefs. Rice finished practice as Patrick Mahomes' most targeted receiver. He was most active working across the middle of the field on crossing routes and in the red zone. Well, no crap, that sounds exactly like how he was scoring his points last year. And you'll remember, we only had a 3-week sample size with Rashee Rice, but when he was doing it, he was a wide receiver 1. And so, literally, I mean, I can close my eyes and I can see the play in my head. I can see the plays where it is literally just the quickest slant I've ever seen in my life, and Mahomes is getting him the ball in 2 seconds, and he's running 10 or 15 more yards, and he's leading the league in yak after 3 weeks.
The ball will be out of Mahomes' hands before it even touches his hands.
The ball doesn't even, you don't even see the ball move. It goes straight from the center into his hands. And we're like, did he just throw the ball?
Right. Actually, like, over his,
Which is great. But again, don't get ahead of your skis for Rashee Rice in redraft this season or this much for your contending teams in Dynasty, because we do still have the legal stuff, and who knows, this could be just flop. But the other thing that I've heard about the Chiefs, this is interesting. I was told this offseason the Chiefs wanted to make a concerted effort to get back some of their offensive roots from Patrick Mahomes' most successful seasons. You might have noticed some of the clips from 7 or 7, 11 on 11 team drills. There were numerous pre-snap motion actions with running backs lining up wide and motioning into the backfield, or receivers motioning out of the backfield and lining up all over the formation. Expect a lot of pre-snap motion during the 2020, which is we haven't had a ton of that from the Chiefs recently. And so that would be a change. That's from Charles Goldman. Shout out Charles Goldman. Works cited. We don't steal people's work. We cite their work. And so there's something here about Nico Remigio. I have literally no clue, but he had the play of the day. So regardless, Rashee Rice is doing what Rashee Rice does. And if he's healthy, that's a great sign. And maybe he overperforms from a contending standpoint this season for your Dynasty team. Do tread lightly. Rashee Rice remains a buy in Dynasty. We've talked about him as our biggest buy all offseason. It will continue to be that way. He's still a buy. Maybe you're getting him a little bit lower because of the negative press because of the jail stuff, but do keep in mind, when he does come back, they're going to use him exactly how they used him last year, and you saw how many points that scores you. So keep that in mind.
Yep. Next couple guys here, we're going to talk about them together because they are lesser rookie prospects that are getting some hype right now. Oronde Gadsden, a lot of highlight reels showing Justin Herbert getting the ball to him connecting with Gadsden. That, as a guy who is a fan of Gadsden as a prospect, that, can get people excited. That can get me excited and stuff. But honestly, guys, I'm just going to be realistic here. I stand by the numbers and the statistics and the history with Greg Roman offenses and the receiving assets in those offenses and their lack of not just production upside, but production at all beyond the lead wide receiver there, and that is Lab McConkey. So, even if Gadsden does show out and is really solid this year, we'll see what he can do production-wise. I am happy to see him getting those connections with Herbert, though, in training camp, and we will monitor that. Elijah Arroyo, I think, is a guy that you might want to look into even more than a guy like Gadsden, because he's in Seattle where they just waived Noah Fant, and that is a huge, huge, huge deal where he was essentially third in the depth chart, and now he's effectively, worst case scenario, effectively second at the beginning of training camp, and I would not be shocked, honestly. I would be more surprised if he started the season second on the depth chart behind A.J. Barner. I think he is most likely to take over A.J. Barner's role as a lead tight end and really have a chance to make a dent in that offense with Sam Darnold. So eyes on Arroyo after that low-key big news that was like little news with the Fant cut. So I think he could honestly be a nice little investment if you want to get him as a throw-in in a deal when you're making trades over training camp.
I mean, they're just two very cheap, easy buys. Yeah. In rookie tight ends like that who are typically not drafted super high, those are some of the biggest value wins.
They're good third and fourth shots in your rookie drafts.
Those guys go up pretty consistently in value. The tight ends are very unique in that aspect. So a little bit of a film session here for you, because I just got on on X, the Everything app, and I did just see this little clip. If you want to zoom in right here, I know you're not going to see it super well.
What's that?
That's Patrick Mahomes. Okay.
Okay.
That's some pre-snap motion. I think that's what's his face. Look at this. Who's that right there coming across the formation and literally ran 5 yards down the field and got a catch and kept running. I will say he looks like he's moving okay, but I mean it's everywhere. It's Rashee Rice. He will, and I think the tweet was from Sleeper, which funny tweet, still evil. Has Rashee Rice ever caught a ball further than 10 yards downfield? My question is, does he need to?
Nope.
He doesn't need to. Now, the last guy we're going to talk about here, I should probably, we talked about this guy on our video that we're going to release here in a couple days as well. And so I'll put the same disclaimer in here that Nathan put in the disclaimer when he talked about them. I would probably do the opposite of what we say about these guys. Again, we made a couple mistakes last year, although Josh Allen was not one of them, about, telling you, oh, we were really in on Anthony Richardson. It was probably the worst take I ever had in my life. And these are the guys who told you sell Jahmyr Gibbs 3 weeks into the season. I mean, we have had some bad takes, and that was bad. And so I understand if you want to take our Colts takes with a grain of salt. Totally get it. But it sounds like they're using the frick out of Tyler Warren. He's getting a lot of hype. In fact, the write-up on Tyler Warren, if I can find it real quick, I think it was from Stephen Holder, who was the Colts ESPN guy. I think it was actually from Nate Adkins, who I think works for IndyStar. So shout out Nate Adkins. Let me just read this to you. Warren even threw a touchdown pass, illustrating the versatility of a player who lined up in line, tight end, in the slot, out wide, in the backfield, at fullback, at H-back, and in the wildcat, and goes on to basically say, this is what the Colts offense has been missing. A guy that they took in the top 15 of the NFL draft, I don't think it's inconceivable to say he's going to get a ton of usage, but not only usage, the creative usage. I mean, if you're playing in 6-point passing touchdown leagues, you're buying Tyler Warren. That's a joke. That's a joke. But realistically, I think people are underestimating the likelihood that Tyler Warren actually gets so much volume this year. Yep. And that would immediately put him in the 3rd round probably for Dynasty startup drafts. And he's currently going like 5th, 6th round. So whether or not all of this is true, I'm not sure. But if Tyler Warren does get the usage that it's being rumored he's getting right now, he could be somebody that could be a pretty good candidate to go up in value, and it could make him a potential buy. And so, again, we got to keep our head above the waves. We got to separate the fluff from the actual news. I would be very, very picky about your sources. If you ever have a question about, hey, are you freaking out about this guy? Just feel free to DM us on Discord. We are happy to tell you, like, yeah, this is nothing, or yeah, this might be actually legit, and then, we're monitoring it. And so we'll continue to update you as these players' values start to fluctuate. But we are in the thick of it now. We actually have stuff going on, and we actually have stuff to talk about. Yes. So we are pumped. So make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you would like to hear us talk about this stuff as it continues to happen. We're getting close to the NFL season, and again, you can get a team blueprint. Make sure your Dynasty team's in good shape. Flockfantasy.com/domain. The link's in the comments. We'd love to have you come join the community. Best Dynasty community around. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.